Hello, everybody. This is Hannah Imperial Cannon with Xencelabs, and I am here with Reagan Heller from Shell Games. We're just going to talk a little bit about your journey, Reagan, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. No, thank you so much for having me. It's great to talk. I'm the vice president of art at Shell Games in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So that's a third-party game developer studio, and I've been there at this point for 18 years now. So it has really been quite a journey for me as an artist and as as a developer of experiences over the course of that time, both
Yeah.
for myself and I think also just for where the industry has started to go as well.
Yeah, I think we met maybe 10 years
Mhm.
ago or something like that when I had visited beautiful studio. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started in games, especially as a woman who started out in very male dominated environment. It's really inspiring what you've done. But we'd love to hear a little more about it.
Yeah, sure. I do like telling this story because it is really unusual. When I was, in high school, which at this point feels like a billion years ago, the entertainment industry, digital arts didn't really exist in the same way, and I
Mhm.
was very, very passionate about art, but also about technology, and I wasn't quite certain where to go with that, but I ended up. I got into the school of my dreams, right? I got into
Mhm.
Carnegie Mellon for communications design, where you
Sure.
get to use technology and art together to get messages across to people. And I was like, yes, this is how I can marry that technology and art together. Um, and during part of my undergrad, I was starting to really dive into that. I was learning more about computers, and I was making new friends, outside of just the graphic design department,
Mhm.
people in computer science, and I started to get a little closer to that. And there was this course I was really interested in, and it was called Building Virtual Worlds, and it was just this cross-disciplinary course where you were able to make VR video game experiences, and that was your active coursework. And I was really excited. I was talking to my friends about it. I was like, oh, but I don't think I quite know. I don't know coding. I don't really know a lot about 3D development yet. I'm not sure I can make it. And they were like, no, no, we need artists. We need graphic designers. We need different people who can do all sorts of things because you need those skills to build these
So were you
worlds.
doing a lot of traditional work at first before school?
Yes, an awful lot of just drawing,
Mhm.
painting, and then I started getting into, the tablets and like being able to use Photoshop. It just opened up a whole new world for me.
So
Um,
interesting.
and I was really excited about that and being in that environment with that sort of combination of art and technology between, the School of Computer Science and the School of Fine Art was super magical. I remember getting to use silicone graphics machines in
Yeah,
my coursework, and it was just like,
super
this is it.
expensive.
This is a place for me.
I
Um,
remember those days.
yeah, but that class, I applied, I got in. That
Mhm.
was that was like the thing for me. I was like, this is what I want to do. I love working in this medium. I love working with uh, programmers. I love
Mhm.
working with these other artists. I love working with audio developers. And what I really loved was using both those artistic skills and the sort of the pillars of graphic design, communications design, which is guiding your audience towards a feeling or taking an action or thinking in a particular way, into these real time experiences where people were putting these huge goofy things on their heads.
Mhm.
But it was definitely what I wanted to do.
Right.
And that led into applying to a master's school um, for entertainment technology, which was very difficult to explain to my parents. And they were like, What are you doing? This is, we've never heard of this. Is this a real thing you can do?"
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like I experienced that as well with my parents back then. They were like,
yeah.
art? I'm like, no, it's computer art.
Yeah. And it I remember my father in particular. He was like, "Yeah, so you're gonna do all this, but you can still maybe be a teacher, or like, so he just didn't he was always looking for what he knew as something that a young woman could do. And
Right.
for me, I was like, I'm taking this someplace new. The world has these new opportunities.
Mhm.
um, and I think that is, was a little scary for my parents, and it takes a little bravery, to get yourself
Absolutely.
out there and do these strange things. But
Yeah, and game development wasn't quite on the path of what women did back then, right?
no, definitely not. It certainly was. It felt definitely more insular.
Mhm.
I know that you could probably have described that industry as much more of like an old boys club. I heard that term thrown around a lot. And I was fortunate. I think in that master's program there was a lot of, we want different voices. We
I
want
see.
this industry to grow beyond what it is now. Um, and I was very inspired by that. I was caught up in it. I felt supported. Um,
Mhm.
and that was very, very cool.
Do you feel that, game development in general chose you or you chose it?
Uh, that's a really good question. I
Yeah.
don't know if I really felt, I can't tell if I felt like I didn't have a choice, or
Mhm.
if the choice was finally so clear for me.
Mhm.
Because that was right around when I was in college. It was when, the dot-com bubble burst, and it was a very uncertain time for any kind of professional graphic designer.
Mhm.
Um, uh, and I felt like I was taking a risk on a number of levels. um, but but yeah, I think I chose it, and I think it kind of just like picked me up and swept me along, just because I
Right.
had found something I was so engaged in and so interested in pursuing.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit about your company and exactly what do you do there, or maybe a little bit more about your journey throughout being there.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Show Games is, like I said, a third party game development studio. We've been around for quite some time now. I was actually one of the first people to, create the studio, and that was another
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah, another point of just sort of, okay, I'm gonna go for this. I'm gonna do something a little new and a little unexpected.
Mm.
Coming out of that program as an artist, I was applying and having interview conversations with really large game studios.
Okay.
And that was exciting. I was like, yes, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. But at the same time, one of my professors was like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a studio that's going to go into interactives and, work with clients that have these particular kinds of experience goals in mind. And
Mhm.
I was like, well, I could, update the jerseys in Madden, and paint the grass, which would be, quite cool as I'm getting into the industry. Or I could take this risk and maybe, spend some time in my early career doing something very similar to my master's program, where I could work on smaller projects, more closely cross-discipline, maybe have a larger artistic impact on the project itself. And that's sort of how I jumped into helping to start Shell Games,
Oh,
which
wow.
grew from about, I think when we started, we were 6 people and maybe
Mhm.
2 interns, and now I think we finally hit just about 150. Um,
Oh,
so it has been quite a journey. When I started, I was very focused in texture art, concept art. Um, I took on predominantly more 2D art roles
I see.
in our projects, and
Yeah.
then as we grew, I was able to move into roles like lead artist, where I had other people working with me, and I was directing them and guiding them. Um,
Mhm.
then I started to take on art director roles, which was a little more, a little more into the leadership and the high level guidance as opposed to doing more of the art myself.
Mhm.
Um, and that led to more management, and then eventually, I sort of uh, ad- was adopting the title of vice president of art, which I always feel like I need to apologize for because it sounds very
Right.
fancy, sounds very powerful, and
You
and
earned
really,
it. You
I
earned
like to
it. It's a lot of
describe it
work.
as it's a fancy way of saying I really try and I try and lead the art department, and guide that, and it's a big responsibility. um, so that's the role that I currently have now, is trying to keep the art all together, functioning well, and producing great work for both ourselves and clients. So.
Right, so you've been in those roles that you're leading
Mhm.
now, so it's an easier path if you've already been there to help guide people into your experience. So speaking of experience in this wonderful role, what are some things that you think you've learned, or how's the industry changed over the years?
Wow. There's been a tremendous amount that
Mhm,
I've learned, certainly. So there's the aspect of that personal journey.
mhm,
I like to have these conversations about the journey as an artist with everyone that I work with, right?
mhm,
Because everyone's journey is very different. Um, for me, I fully acknowledge that uh, I used to be much, much more connected to creating the art myself,
mm,
and being an expert in the craft of art. And as I grew and started doing more leadership, I recognized how much I enjoyed working with people and growing people around me.
mhm,
Um, and how fulfilling that truly was, setting up the right processes, helping to make sure everyone had the right tools, you know guiding people in good communication and in good craftsmanship, getting the training that was necessary, getting us more client work so we could do more amazing things, or helping to develop the seed concept for our own IP. um,
interesting.
and for me, I love that. So I think I learned about, yes, I absolutely will always love art. I always want to be able to communicate that, with that, to connect to my artist with that, to, help critique and move that forward and keep pushing that from a studio perspective.
Mhm,
But it's the people part to it, to really guiding and managing creatives, which is very difficult. I think management it's sometimes a dirty word. It's like, oh, like manager, oh, gross, and that's not for everyone, in their career path. And also, it's definitely something that if you don't really, really work to do that well, if you have a bad manager in your system, that has negative impacts on everyone in the studio. So it is a big responsibility,
yeah,
definitely.
I agree with that. Um, Speaking of that, I'd like to talk a little bit more about women in games, especially, starting off when you did very male dominated industry. Do you see that there's more women now than there used to be, and any kind of changes you see happening along the way?
Yeah, I I like to tell people the first GDC I went to, I was a graduate student at the time, and I had actually won a scholarship for a GDC pass, and I was just
Okay.
delighted. I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! Like, I get to go to GDC." And at that time, you really could count the number of women at GDC on your hands, and it was a strange feeling. It was a little bit like you did feel a little bit like an alien presence, and I definitely feel that that has changed over the years. There's definitely
Yes.
still work to do. I know there's a lot of conversation in the industry about that. Like, I want to see that improve more and more. But the last GDC I was at, I was so delighted at the female presence out
Mhm.
on the floor, and not just on the expo or the student floor. I was seeing more people there as speakers, as developers. And that was very exciting. I think we all want to see that move forward, right? And just
Yeah.
really be a more representative and diverse industry.
Yeah, I'm excited to see more women as well. I remember the older GDCs and it was like 50 to 1, maybe
Yeah.
even worse.
No, and there was I know that there was I had walked by and there were a group of women in a, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, what is this?" And I went over and they're like, "This is the GDC Woman in Games. You're
Yeah,
welcome here." But it was this little pod in the
mhm,
main lobby of the Moscone Center. Um, and again, it's been exciting to see that grow and
mhm.
change. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is exciting, especially seeing more like programmers, girls, taking these STEM programs. I have a daughter myself who I always encourage to learn more and, hey, you can do coding, right? That wasn't a thing back then,
Yeah. And
right?
there are a lot of programs that are very specific to let's get more females in STEAM, in STEM.
Hmm.
And that's exciting. Like, again, I think back to when I was in high school. It was so vacant. It was almost like I was very lucky. I had certain opportunities that I grabbed a hold of and certain passions that I found. Um,
Yeah.
but it wasn't someplace where you could learn more about the industry readily, or that had programs that would introduce and bring you in and specifically sort of talk about, like, hey, here's what you can do with art and technology at the same time.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
um, I know
I
seeing
agree.
seeing more of that, even starting at, like, oh my goodness, just the elementary school level, has been really, really exciting.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. So being that you started very male dominated, have, do you feel that you had any struggles along the way as a woman to prove yourself or had
Yeah.
been stereotyped, should I say?
Yeah, and again, I feel I was very privileged in being able to help build a studio that was very forward thinking about gender and age and diversity, and trying to make sure that we fostered that, which I think we're definitely continuing to do. So I don't have any really, like, war stories necessarily, but definitely, as being young and being female in the industry, you definitely would have those moments where you would recognize the bias, right? It was like, oh, I am not what this person expected. I'm female. I'm younger. I'm not in the old boys club, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that that is something that I would always, really try and be like, okay, I'm going to do this. Let me show you what I've got, right? Because
Mhm.
at the core, I always like to think about it as if, okay, biases are unfair, absolutely. But there are questions about, okay, how are you going to help me make this game? You're not what I expected, and I've got this goal. Um, and I really like to attack that question immediately. I like to engage and start
Mhm.
immediately collaborating on, all right, you've come because you have this game idea, you have this game problem, you're looking to my studio, you're looking to me to help create something great, and let's do that together immediately.
Mhm.
And really start, having those collaborative conversations and getting that buy-in for immediate, like, oh, okay, I now see you might not have been what I expected, but this is exactly what I was hoping to do. um
Mhm.
and yeah, there are moments where maybe that was a little bit tougher, because you gotta get over those biases for sure.
Mhm.
But that strategy, I think, always served me fairly well for, hey, let's move past that as quickly as we can and build something great together. And I think, again, I was very fortunate. My studio has always been super supportive of me and my role, of the art teams that we have here, because we build great stuff. Um, but yeah, definitely. I will say I feel that a lot less now.
Yeah.
I think earlier on, absolutely that was something, that you had to move past at
Prove
times.
yourself. You had to work harder to prove yourself.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And now it's a little bit more, yeah, the industry is changing. I think people are more used to seeing diversity of people in the industry, which is
Mhm.
great.
Yeah, I agree. I just in a personal note, I remember, answering a technical question, and then that client was like, "Okay, that's nice." And then a fellow colleague answered the same question, just a little bit differently, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, that's what we need to do." So I get it. Yeah, very.
Yeah, yeah.
How about other experience with working with women? Do you feel there is ever any competitiveness because you're, going after some of the similar jobs? I won't say roles, but maybe different jobs, or, trying to prove yourself to gain, that win.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've really experienced that too much myself. And there's the same kind of thing. Like, you're there is a lot of, I would like to prove myself to you.
Mhm.
And I have the same approach, where it's like, hey, we're here to collaborate. I'm here to work with you.
Yeah.
And that tends to really quickly, move people past a feeling of competitiveness. And I think this kind of transcends even gender a little bit, because sometimes it'll be about title, it'll be about a contract, or a
Mhm.
bid or something like that. um, and there is some kind of competition or bias, or maybe a little bit of hard feeling about something in there. um, and finding those ways to immediately open the door to, hey, I really want to work with you on this is exciting for me to get to work with you on this, let's go. Tends to really get people on board and move past, like, oh, we're not competing, we're collaborating. um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Reagan, can you give me a little overview of what Shell Games actually does?
Sure, absolutely. So we're a third party game developer, uh, out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a little bit of an unusual place for a major game studio. Most people, when they think about game studios, it's like, oh, Silicon Valley or Seattle or Austin. But no, we're in Pittsburgh, and we have a very diverse focus in terms of what kind of games and experiences we make. So we have a number of different pillars of kinds of focus that we have on development. We've done a lot in terms of educational games. So that has always been something that we've had a focus and expertise in, whether we're working with children's education or a little bit of healthcare education or adult education. Um,
Mhm.
Definitely had success with that. Um, LBE, location-based experiences, things where games are entering spaces that they hadn't quite been before, interactions in museums, theme park attractions, things along those lines. So usually lots of big setup, where we work mainly, we collaborate with our clients and develop the software to make those experiences go.
Oh,
Um,
how exciting.
and definitely over the years, one of the places that we've always kind of had our heart on a little bit, it goes almost all the way back to school, is that virtual reality. And the VR market has finally started to flourish, and that's been very exciting because some of us who have been here a long time have a history of sort of loving that medium and developing for that. So we're super excited because we've been able to work with world class clients, and with VR we started to create our own properties, our being able to make our own games, and had success in that space. So right now, there's a lot of excitement in our studio for not only great client work, but our own IP, and getting to tell our own stories and making our own game experiences, mainly right now in virtual reality. But we've also done work in you know mixed reality and AR, and we're definitely not afraid to try new technology and to try to bring experiences to people in different ways. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
so I know I mentioned I've been here like 18 years, but there's no way to be bored. I feel like it's so rare for us to do the same thing, over and over again. We are always pushing the boundaries. Clients come to us and they're like, "Hey, we have this interesting, game problem, experience problem with this weird new technology." And I think that we've always loved to take on those challenges, and work with them. It does keep you on your toes. It's definitely never boring here, for sure.
I have a- Yeah, that's amazing. I have a couple questions about, how do you keep on top of some of that new technology? Are you learning in-house? Are you bringing other people in who've learned that? Are you taking courses?
Yeah, continued education is, I think, huge. We have a uh, professional benefits that we offer for all of our employees that is literally like, hey, we want you to learn something new. So we want you to take time during the year, and we're going to give you days to explore something new, to take a tutorial course, to take training, to go
Okay.
to, SIGGRAPH or GDC and things like that. Um, and as a studio too, so that's kind of like for individuals, because we always want individuals to grow. I remember when
Mhm.
it's like, oh, we gotta really start thinking about the PBR like pipeline and all that, physically based rendering. And we were like, yeah, we do, we gotta keep moving forward. um, so I think for individual artists, identifying how we can help them learn and grow, how they can use those benefits, how we can get them training that will relate to their next project.
Mhm.
um, Definitely had to do training as a studio as well. Bringing in experts to workshop with us to teach us some new techniques, making strategic hires, with the expectation conversation of, hey, we want you to help level us up in this particular tool that you are excellent at, because we see how that could have real impact on future development. So yes, that's always been a really big part of what we do. We're also fortunate in, we've grown consistently but slowly in a way where we'll have space in between projects, and that's kind of a terrifying spot for some artists in the industry, right? Because it's like
Mhm.
between projects, or a project gets canceled, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna get let go, right?
Mhm.
And we have never had to do that. We take that as an opportunity where I kind of sit with the individual artists and I'm like, hey, here's what we're going to do next. We're looking towards this in the future. How can we help you train? What is a tutorial we can take? How can we help you level up in between projects so you are ready for the next one? Um, and we've had a ton of success, I think, with that. So we
Oh,
take
very
advantage of those
interesting.
little gaps, instead of just being like, hey, get out of here and we'll hire you back when we have the next project. We keep our people together, we train them, we have a stable work environment so that people aren't under this strange stress of, grow, shrink, grow, shrink. And I think we've been very fortunate to be able to plan and do that successfully, and I think it's really helped our artists grow with us instead of having to leave and grow
Yeah,
elsewhere.
that's very unusual.
It is. It
Yes.
definitely is. I've
Yep.
I've had conversations where people are absolutely incredulous, interviews where I'm describing that philosophy and they're like, I think you're lying to me. This sounds too good to be true. And I'm like, well, we're
Does.
not a perfect studio, but like this is definitely, that we want that. We want to make sure that we're keeping you here long term, that you're going to grow with us.
Mhm.
But yeah, it is very weird. I would love to see more of the industry be able to adopt that, to strategize in a way where you can keep people longer term. Um,
Yeah, you're building a community, a family. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I think that would be so, so healthy for the industry. I have a big thing about that. I'd love to see us get there because I think it will invite more people to feel great about the game industry too,
Yeah,
long term. So
that's amazing. I think that's amazing. Like I said, I haven't heard that in the past. I know many people work in games or in films and they're jumping and jumping and jumping from project to project and company to company.
yeah,
They're
yeah, and
very
it's
impressive.
It's it's uh it's hard to really trust who you're working with if at any turn you're, on this strange chopping block, and I feel like as a manager, I want to build that trust with my people.
Mhm,
I want to make sure that, they know we're invested in them longer term.
mhm,
And there's that impact of really burning great people out, with either, crunch, which is another, I think, chronic industry problem, or with that feeling of, well, I'm not going to be here after this project anyway. So I need to start protecting myself and thinking about the next thing. Both of those, I think, are very destructive management practices in the industry.
mhm.
Definitely do everything we can to avoid.
Oh, very interesting. Have you ever done anything like a, emotional intelligence training or education? And do you use that personally and or in the workplace?
Definitely. I feel that that's very important.
Mhm,
As I've grown as a manager and as a leader, the studio has been very supportive of me uh, providing classes for that, providing conferences for that, resources, books, and that's not even just for me. We offer that training to all of our managers, and then all of the individuals like in our company too. Sort of the emotional intelligence that we really want people to grow in, so that,
mhm,
even if they aren't going into a management track necessarily, it helps people offer more quality feedback consistently
mhm,
to their peers, to offer feedback in ways that is really constructive. And again, that aspect of helping to level people up around you, being
mhm,
willing and able to have difficult conversations, which are hard. They're very hard. um, but when you have everyone kind of willing to give feedback and willing to talk about, hey, my expectations aren't quite being met, what are your expectations about, this role or position or your work or something like that? I think that helps a lot. So I feel like from the top to the bottom, that sort of education, along with the technical education and the artistic education and the craftsmanship, is something that we definitely think to invest in. And I know I use it all the time, like
Mhm,
every day.
mhm.
It can be a struggle at times because it's hard to have difficult conversations, and it is a responsibility that I know I have, and making sure that I'm approaching that in a way that, doesn't feel accusatory and
Right.
feels like it's coming from a place of curiosity and interest, even if it is,
And growth. Mhm.
yeah, it's like, hey, we do have to course correct something, but I'd like to know, I'd like to know more about what's going on here and how we can figure out some strategies around that, the impact that it has on others, so we can try and make sure that, you're impacting your team the best way possible too. um, that's I think a huge focus, and
Mhm,
any
mhm.
company would benefit not just from their managers and leaders, but from, I think, their employees. Um, doing a little leveling up on that so that the communication flow is stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. So since I work with Sense Labs, we're all about community and the senses and, things that inspire you. So I like to ask these kind of questions during my personal growth and being in the industry as long as you, I think, maybe longer. um, I feel that it's not just about the tools or the applications, but it's really about the inspiration and how you started in the first place, right? How did you get involved? So I'd like to, I always like to ask people I'm talking with, like, about what inspires you, what you started as doing graphic arts and traditional art, and you moved into this digital realm. But what are some of the things around you that really, keeps you jazzed, keeps you going?
Yeah. A really easy answer for that is I love the work that the artists at my studio do. That
Mhm,
is one of the most inspiring things
mhm,
to me, is getting to see the products that they are developing, and that creative process, and being part of that, talking about it. Um, we uh we just recently had a roundtable with the artists in the studio, and we realized, due to the pandemic,
mhm.
things are a little more scattered, and individual teams were a little more siloed from each other, and we were missing some of the opportunities to walk around and physically look at other people's art, look at other projects' work. um, and we brainstormed around that a little bit, and we're like, hey, we should more mindfully, in our main, studio Slack channel, since we all can't be together, I'll ping the art directors, and every week we're going to have the ADs post their art dailies from their projects, where all
Nice.
the different artists, contribute the work, and there's notes, and there's, little doodle overs and things like that, which usually are a little more easily shared, just by walking over to talk to your friend, or from, our usual studio walkarounds, where we, have snacks and beverages, and get to look at stuff. And the impact that that had was actually incredible. All the little Slack emojis would just light up underneath, every one of these art directors posts, and it was just delightful to see, to look in there, and see that creative process, see the different styles, see the exploration, see where a concept kind of didn't work out, and then how it changed. And just seeing all of the artists get really jazzed about looking at each other's art again.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So that was just a recent example of that fires me up. That makes me excited about what's around the corner. It makes me excited about working with other artists. And there's definitely, the more traditional things too, like, watch some movies, look at some amazing art, go to a
Mhm.
museum if you can. Um, all of those things are obviously part of it too, but like really high on my list is just getting to look at what my teams are able to do.
Yeah, that's exciting. Is there anything that you can share with some of the projects you've worked on in the past, or some things that are coming out that you'd like to tell everyone about?
Yeah, we had just recently released our first sequel, and this was huge for us. So I
Mm.
Expect You to Die was, one of our first VR titles, and I remember when it was, just a little prototype when the mouse cursor was still part of the VR experience. This is how early into the VR scene that was. Um, and I have a real passion for spy fiction, and building what that world was with the team, um, was just very, very exciting, and seeing people kind of, um, create that brand. It was like, oh wow, Shell Games has a brand. We were doing the normal branding stuff from a graphic design perspective. We got a
Right.
logo, we got this, we got that, but the mythology, the tone, the humor mixed with the seriousness and all that, um, we were so excited to be able to release a sequel to that property,
Mhm.
um, because we were really able to, listen to the feedback of, the players that loved that franchise with us, and take it to the next level. Getting Will Wheaton to do the voice of, our villain, being able to go and get actual instrumental, musicians to record the intro song, and figuring out all these ways to take that brand and make it even better, to make that experience more cohesive as a story.
Mhm.
I just really saw the whole studio light up and rally around that product. Um, and I think it was a big step for us as creatives, as developers, to be like, oh, we have a brand, we have a thing, and then that's led to the development of new ideas that people are excited about. What's the next shell brand? What is another concept we're gonna come up with? Um, so I think that was, really a high point for us. And any time that we come up with that new idea, like Until You Fall, so similar, very different product, very different game. But I remember the art director and the leadership team, they were like, hey, you know what? We're thinking synthwave might really be a guiding kind of like philosophy for this game, synthwave music, and I
Okay.
love synthwave, right? So I was just so into it, and then watching the visuals start to craft around the audio, was delightful as well. So
Wow.
yeah.
Very interesting. Congratulations on that. And I know I love a lot of your projects, and you've had such remarkable career. You're just an inspiration to so many girls out there and women, who are looking to be in this community. So bravo.
Sheesh, thanks. I was gonna say you're gonna make me get embarrassed.
I know.
It's so funny because it feels like I just got here. It's such an interesting career. You don't have time to be bored with it. There's always the next challenge, and it's growing and changing so much all the time. So
Yes. So is there anything that you can share, about, things that, kids out there who are looking to get in this industry, what are some steps that they could take, or things that they should be mindful of or learn?
yeah, I'm almost in a way so jealous. There are so many resources now. So
Mhm.
sometimes I'll go to schools, to middle schools, or we'll have an open house at Shell Games, or there'll
Mhm.
be a STEM experience that is like, hey, can you come talk to us about game art? And I'm
Mhm.
so excited for them, because these resources are there, between the the internet having, tutorials and easy ways to get into the tool sets, game maker tool sets, or educational versions of programs that might just fiscally be way out of range for people. um,
Mhm,
they're definitely get into that. It is a lot of people ask, oh, what can I do, what can I do, and it's like, start making games if that's something that you're really interested in, and
mhm.
don't make them by yourself, make them with other people.
That's great.
Find a little class you can take, go online and find some groups to talk to.
Mhm,
Sharing your work on the internet is incredible. You can post your work on ArtStation and have people talk about it and
mm,
give you good advice, even if you don't have high school art teacher who's going to be able to tell you, maybe you could be more efficient with your poly count and like this and that." There are now places on the internet and courses you can take where you
mhm,
can get that experience early, and it'll really give you a big leg up in honing your skills, both in working with other people to make games and in working on your craft as an artist. So yeah, get out there, be brave, try things. This industry it's growing, it's changing. It is. I want to see all kinds of people come in here and start building these experiences, because there's space for everyone.
yeah, that's great advice. Thank you, Reagan. I see, Reagan, one other question. Have you ever softened your tone to sound more pleasant while you were in any meetings or around a group?
Yeah, I I honestly do think that I do that a lot.
Mm,
But my perspective on that is, it's certainly, for me, not because I'm a woman, or
mm,
because of a gender issue. I think, as a manager and as a leader, I've got that fancy VP title. The words that I have a lot of weight, and I want to make sure that when I'm communicating with people, that I am approaching that with a philosophy of, curiosity and kindness and collaboration, right? Um, so the answer to it might be, all the time, right? Especially if you're having a one-on-one. I've definitely gotten the reaction of, "Oh, okay, Reagan wants to talk to me," like, and there's a little bit of a wall up.
mm,
There's nerves there,
mm.
and I want to make sure that I'm kind of breaking down that wall, and I'm starting to have a helpful, constructive conversation about whatever is going on. So yeah, I guess, maybe the answer is all the time, and I just see that as part of my job, as a manager, part of my job as, as a vice president, working with clients. My goal is always to be collaborative, to be interested in what the other person has to say, to come with good ideas I feel confident about, and to represent my art team well. So, again, the answer could be all the time, but I think my motivation for that is always to be a good partner and a good leader, and someone that other people want to work with and want to talk to.
Yeah, that's great advice, actually. I have a couple more questions around growth and again, advice maybe for young females who are identifying to going into this workplace. Is there any advice you could give them?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a place you can be. We want you here.
Mm,
The industry has changed a lot, and I just want to encourage females, to look into this as a profession, because there are a lot of opportunities as a creative, as a leader. I think there are, more and more people that you can look to that are in those spaces now that might not have been there before. Um, and really be brave, but believe in yourself. Like, you know what you're bringing to the table, and you have every right to be very proud of it. And you have every right to be at that table too. Um, just another GDC story. I remember, really early on, I was like, okay, I'm an art lead on this project. I'd like to go to this art leadership roundtable. And there's this big table, and I was like, I'm not going to sit in the back. I'd like to sit at the table. There's a space for me there. I'm going to go sit there now. And it's one of those places that has, I think, started to really change over the years, where I'm seeing more women sitting at that table. And I'd like to invite more to do so. I'd like to see, the industry continue to be diverse. So don't be afraid to come sit at the table. We're pulling up chairs. There are other women here. We're interested in working with you. Um, there's so many different roles within the creative industry right now. So yeah. Um,
I love that. Thank you for that. Well, I think that's wonderful advice all around, and I can't thank you enough for being a speaker for our artist spotlight with Xencelabs, and love to do this again for sure,
this
and
was
hopefully see you
awesome.
in person.
Thank you so much. It is just really an honor, and it's always pleasant to talk with you. So thank you for taking some time to do it.
All right, anytime. Let's do it again. Thanks a lot.